5-4. Nah, the Chiefs aren't 5-4 anymore though. Chiefs are 6-4 now. So the Chiefs are 6-4. I'm gonna bring on Dr. Lindsay Weisner. So here she comes.
Hi.
Dr. Weisner, thank you for joining in today.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry it's 2021, so nothing goes right. What can I say? So full of multitasking and failing at everything, which is what
Definitely,
we're supposed
definitely.
to do.
So for Mondays, what we normally do is we have a segment called Mental Health Mondays, and we just talk about different mental health issues.
Sure.
But before we get into that, if you can do us a favor and just introduce yourself again one more time. I know you've been on before,
Yes.
but just to get them reacquainted, and also talk about your podcast, please.
Sure. My name is Lindsay Weisner. I'm a psychologist in New York. I work a lot with suicidal teens, anxiety. Pandemic has pretty much meant I work with anything because there's a lot out there. And then I also wrote a book called 10 Steps to Finding Happiness, a guide to permanent satisfaction, which I'm not trying to fool anyone. Nothing's permanent. You have to keep doing it. And then oh yes, I have a podcast called Neurotic Nourishment Podcast where I like to say it's for like smart sweary moms, but you don't have to be a mom. And as long as you don't mind swearing, you're good. But we talk about mental health subjects and then other things that are usually off limits. I like to talk about anything that makes other people uncomfortable because once we get uncomfortable, we have the room to grow. And then I have a fairly new podcast called the Crimes of Long Island podcast because I'm a true crime jumpy myself. Jumpy. Also junky, but and so I love true crime, and I moved to Long Island, New York. Nope, it was a long time ago now. It was like 14 years ago, and it's a small town and it's surrounded by small towns. And if you didn't grow up here, I feel like you have no clue how much drama there is here to unfold. So every other episode on Crimes of Long Island podcast, it sounds better when I say unearth because it sounds like I'm doing digging, but I'm not. But we unearth an old or a new crime that occurred, and they're often much closer than I would have realized. So we're getting a lot of positive feedback from Long Islanders because it's kind of cool and creepy to think that this goes on right under your nose.
Yeah, definitely. People I don't think realize that there's crimes every day,
Yeah.
and a lot of the times they're closer than you could imagine. You know what's one that happened not too long ago here? Maybe you can talk a little bit about it. There was a crime out here in the East LA area, which isn't too far from me. There was a lady. Everybody said that she seemed regular. Nothing seemed like there was wrong with her, and she
Sure.
had the postpartum depression
Right.
from a pregnancy, and she ended up killing her two kids, unfortunately. And people were just surprised because they said they didn't expect that from her. That wasn't what like didn't seem typical of her behavior. And
Well,
I
yeah,
go
I mean,
ahead.
if it were typical, we'd like to hope she'd be in jail. But if there's a couple things, because if you'll notice it, everyone always says like, "I would never have thought that he or she could do this." And there's a couple things we all have like subconscious biases and uh cognitive biases, and that just means we look at the world in a way that makes us feel better about ourselves, and in a way that makes our beliefs feel more reinforced. And like, if you knew your neighbor was probably going to murder kids and you didn't tell anyone,
Mhm.
how awful would you feel? Versus all these people that come out of the woodwork after something horrific happens and say, "Yeah, I never would have thought she could do that." So maybe she snapped, or maybe I think part of it is also how we need to see the world so that we don't feel like total garbage all the time.
Yeah,
I once
that's kind of
Yes.
strange because it seems like people will interject themselves in there when they don't necessarily need to.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, for there's a bias. It's called a heuristic bias, and it's HEURISTIC, and I have no clue what it means in and of itself because I've long forgotten. But it basically means we inflate the importance of things, the importance, the frequency, etc. when something emotional gets tied to an event. So a long time ago, I had a 13 or 14-year-old who once told me that one of her best friends died. And in speaking to her parents, they're like, she went to camp with her. Like, they went to the same camp. I don't think they were the same year, and the girl died of, I don't remember honestly if it was leukemia or like a tragic accident, but either way, this 13/14-year-old attached onto this memory as like a lot of weird things have happened to me.
Mm.
And so similarly, right now we like to think that there are a lot of people that like people are all or none on certain issues, and that we can divide our world into two, whether I don't know what we're calling them, but like liberals or versus conservatives or whatever new term we've thought up for it. But really, in order to reinforce our own belief system in the face of evidence that like everything's not black and white, a lot of it's gray,
Yeah.
people will pay more attention to stories that both support their instincts or their feelings, and also stories that stick with them because they're memorable. So, I have a 10-year-old, and last week we got her first shot of the vaccine, um, and immediately someone was like, I don't know. My doctor says it's not safe. I have people that I heard about this girl who, and whatever follows is a horrific story that supports, not not giving a vaccine to your child. And had I wanted to engage in this discussion, surely some horrific thing that I read about a young child getting sick, that would, I would have that to throw out there. But I don't, because I don't think it's worth a debate, worth a discussion. And also we tend to stick to our own belief systems, and rarely do we change our mind unless someone has really convincing.
Yeah. So confirmation bias a lot of times too. Look, like you
Yeah.
said earlier, looking for something that supports what you, and you can
Yeah.
do it. You can find it anywhere. You can always find your bias anywhere, and yeah, that's why it's a very careful. You have to be very careful about reading through things. That's why I try to read like a few different sources on the
Yeah.
same subject to see how's everybody looking at this. Would it be okay if we share the link so other people could jump on if they had any questions about any kind of?
100%. I'd love it.
Okay, cool. So I'm setting the putting the link there, and I will go ahead and pin it. So there's a link if anybody has any questions for Dr. Weisner.
You can call me Lindsay or Dr. Weisner. I don't care. It does. I'm still a doctor. It doesn't matter what you call me.
Yeah. So some people, yeah, I know we talked about it last time. Always some people who they're really touchy about that. They're like,
Yeah.
call them doctor, like they go crazy. Just like, all right. And how true is this? Being that you're a psychologist, right? From what I read something, and I'm not sure how true it is, but I said it sounds about right. They say that the higher the surgeon is on the body, the more like kind of arrogant that they'll or egotistical they'll feel. So it's like if you're a brain surgeon, that's like a huge ego. Like I know that's generalization, but generally speaking,
No, but I mean, it fits. I mean, the other thing I've noticed is like there are certain doctors that tend to be more narcissistic than others. And uh wow, that's quite a Larry King episode. I mean, I do think that surgeons especially have to find a way to distance themselves from what they do,
yeah,
since like cutting into someone's body is icky.
yeah.
And it makes sense to me, but yeah, I'd love to know more about that Larry King episode that just
Let's see.
popped
This
up.
says buenos dias everyone listening to the background. Larry David. Oh, it's a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode
Mhm.
yesterday was debriefing the KKK to prove he's better than them. by accepting everyone. I love that show. You ever seen that show?
I have not. I think it's. I mean, I know Larry David, obviously. I think it's super funny, and it's a great idea, and it's, obviously it's full of irony, and who doesn't love irony? Like.
So we have our first question coming in. So I'm gonna bring them in here. Rabbit, what up, G?
Good morning, Cricket. Good morning, Doctor.
Hi there.
Lindsay, hi. How you guys
Doesn't
doing
matter.
today? Good. I have a question. I have a son. Maybe about a year or a year and a half ago, like he did a lot of drugs, and they diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia
Oof.
and catatonic stage, I guess. He feels that they're misdiagnosing him because he doesn't feel schizo or stuff like that, but he gets into a catatonic stage. I don't understand it completely. He's a grown man, so like sometimes when we try to check him up in the hospital without his written consent, we couldn't find out any information.
Sure.
But can you break down anything about catatonic stage, how it works, maybe how it happens, and is it the brain that makes this happen? And I'm assuming it is.
Sure. I mean, it's a complicated question, and I will absolutely do my best to answer it in general, not pertaining to your son, because I don't know your son, but like we'll sort of loosely flesh it out. I mean, I don't know. So you said he's an adult. So how old is he?
He's 24.
Okay. And so I don't know what kind of drugs he was doing, or if he still is. I definitely think there are drugs that can mimic schizophrenia or bipolar, where you're super happy and then super not, super depressed. To diagnose someone with schizophrenia, often it'll happen. I mean, 20s is slightly early. It's more like mid to late 20s. And the idea of, are we diagnosing the symptoms based on drugs or the symptoms based on something else? Were the drugs an attempt to treat these symptoms? I think that's something that I would be interested. I also think oftentimes the legal system fails us, and I've, depending on when his first hospitalization was, there's certain diagnoses that can only be given after a certain age. Catatonic really means he's quite unresponsive. Is that how you experience him?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He gets to where he used to weigh approximately about 175 pounds. By the time he gets to a certain status, he's like a prisoner of war. He's really sucked up, so skinny and he don't move. He don't talk to us. He don't move. He just stays there with his eyes open, and there's no response from him. So that's when we call the ambulance and take him into the hospital. But this happened on about like 2 occasions within the last year, and he takes medicine. He goes back to work, but lately he tells me, he says, "Hey, I can feel it creeping up again, Dad." And then I tell him, "Well, see a doctor." But again, the system does kind of fail us, because he's trying to make appointments, and they say, "Well, this lady's not in, this and that," and he don't want to get to that stage again. So, but he feels like he's misdiagnosed, because he was telling me the other day, I was talking to him about 3 days ago, and he says, "I don't feel like I'm talking to people or this and that," but during that time that he was on the drugs, he was hearing things, and he was, acting strange,
Sure.
So, but he's not doing what he used to do no more, but he does get into that catatonic stage. I mean, it slowly creeps up on him to where then he gets just down in the bed and he just sits there and doesn't move or nothing. And he won't eat or nothing, for the longest time.
I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm a parent myself, and it must be so difficult to watch. Mine are younger, and so I can force them to do things. But to try to force a 24-year-old to take care of himself, and clearly when he's on the medication, it helps. So I'm not sure
It
why.
does, but like he was mentioning, because um, I was talking to my doctor because I suffer from post traumatic stress and a
Okay.
PTSD. And basically when I see my doctor, he asks questions about the family, this and that, whatever, you know. And sometimes we talk about my son. And when we talk about my son, he was pretty much stating that the dosage, because when my son gets his medicine and they give him the shot and the medicine, he's just like constantly agitated, just like this. He's just like, he can't stay still. He's you know, and he says, I feel like he's on a good one or something. He can't stay still. Restless is what it is. Yeah. And so I think the medicine that they're giving him is, the doctor says, it's too much of a higher dose. It's a high dose. So maybe they should cut back on the dosage so that he won't have those side effects from the medicine. Because I mean, when I look at him, he just constantly, he can't stay still. He's pacing up and down the living room, up and whatever, you know. So I told him, talk to your doctor, make sure you let him know what the side effects you're feeling, so maybe they could cut back on it and change it up, you know. But my thing is the catatonic stage, I don't understand it. I got to read up more on it. But when it happens, it's like you can't get no response from him at all, and he just lays there like in another world. He don't even hear you or nothing, man.
Well, there's a good interestingly, a couple years ago, Anderson Cooper, if you want to go on YouTube and then Anderson Cooper schizophrenia, he was doing something on it, and he wore headphones and then tried to perform like tasks that should be fairly easy, particularly for Anderson Cooper. And in fact, it's incredibly distracting to as to watch him go through this, and then it's also incredibly distracting for him. And after a while, he just stops responding to everything. Now, I'm not saying that's actually how that catatonic switch occurs, but it very well could be. You know, I mean, if my daughter calls my name 50 times in a day, I have to stop hearing it at some point for my sanity. And it could be sort of a survival instinct. You know, someone had mentioned something about, you know, getting back to nature and sort of a natural and holistic cause. And for some, that's great, you know, not for everyone. Oh, they said it's the frequency state of mind he's in. He needs to change his diet and atmosphere, environment, take him places, and being close to plant life will help. I'll endorse that, although I'm not by any means stating that that's equal to
You know
physician's treatment. Yeah.
what's funny is my son, he's always been, all of his life he's been active, a skateboarder, graduated high school, outgoing, laughing, this and that. And one time he just overdid it with all the meds he took, you know. I mean, all the drugs he took. He was just trying to have a good time. But
Yeah,
since then,
well,
he hasn't been the same. But he was one that used to go outside in the backyard and just lay on the floor and say, "Hey, I'm one with the earth," you know. He's
sure.
that type of person, you know. And but after this happened, we're trying to still get him diagnosed properly, you know, the right way, because we're getting a second opinion is what we're
Good.
going to
Good.
get done. Yeah.
I think a second opinion will be great. I also think don't pay too much attention to the diagnosis as like the diagnosis is something to help guide people. It's not a life raft, you know. And if something works, great. You know, there are people do benefit from nature and trees and hikes and all those lovely things.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it
It's great.
doesn't.
It brings
Yeah,
it brings
it
you
does.
peace.
Me too. It just I can't say it takes the place of proper medical care.
Well, you know, sometimes like certain meds, me being exposed to certain meds, I don't like the feeling because, you know, I was an ex-drug user.
Sure.
So some of the medicines that they used to give me made me feel like I was on speed, you know,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I don't like that effect because I'm sober and I've been sober for many years now.
That's
And
great.
but the thing is, uh my main focus right now is just to find out about that catatonic, how it works and why.
Yeah.
what's actually happening in the brain that makes him turn that way, you know?
Right. I mean, it's a complicated question, particularly given the drug use. And so it's like in your son's case, it may be caused by the drugs. In other people's case, it may be caused by something else. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like our body's got to have adaptive mechanisms, and maybe the catatonic state is your son's body attempting to not save him, but to bring him to a better state of well-being that we just don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. Because when I see him in there, he really goes south, you know, and it's not. It doesn't seem like it kind of protecting him. He's really does bad, you know.
Yeah.
And so we have to get him fed. They have to do it through the vein, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
They
Yep.
have to hydrate him, everything, you know. So I told him just when I seen him, like I said, just to get help, basically. Make sure keep on calling if they have a cancellation or whatever, you know, just to try to get in a little sooner because you know they have such a backlog, you know, and stuff like that. But anyways,
Yeah.
I appreciate your input and everything and your answers, and thank you for your
course.
time.
And I'm sorry. I'll be the first to tell you our mental health system is broken and it's not fair.
Yeah. All right, Cricket. You have a blessed day,
You too,
and
G.
all you guys,
Thank you.
peace
See you
and take
tomorrow.
care.
Be
All
ready.
right. I've been ready. Stop running.
How y'all going,
All
G?
right, Cricket. Bye.
So we have a chess game tomorrow. We're gonna do a virtual chess game.
That sounds very exciting, confusing. I don't know. I'm the only one in my house that doesn't play chess. So
So we have this question that came up earlier from Pinche Know It All. He says, I can't jump on, but can you ask if a sociopath can outsmart themselves into thinking they're not a sociopath?
I'm gonna go with no. They might not think they might think they're not a sociopath, but then they certainly think there's something else better than the rest of us, because that's the whole point of a sociopath is that the rules don't apply to them.
Yeah.
So it may not even occur to them that they're a sociopath. It may simply be those rules were made for other people, not me.
So when so this is a question I have now, just to touch on that and expand on that a little bit. So with us on the streets, right? A lot of people like the group, how I grew up, we kind of felt like the rules didn't apply to us because they can't do anything to us, right? There's nothing they can do to kind of break us. We don't care. Send us to jail. We don't care. We'll go to jail. Like I don't give a, it's basically like I don't give a fuck, right? So are those sociopathic tendencies, or is that just kind of a chill? Like a lot of times, a lot of us were young.
Right. A sociopath is one of the personality disorders or antisocial, borderline, bipolar, something else. They're narcissistic, of course. And so they're personality disorders. And so in theory, you're not supposed to diagnose them in anyone until they're over 18. Meanwhile, these days it probably should be over 25 because our brain doesn't fully develop. Like our impulse control is at the back of our brain, and our executive functioning or like designated driver is at the front of their brain, and the two have to grow and to meet, at which point you become an intelligent person capable of making complex decisions. So oftentimes when you're talking about a borderline patient or whatnot, there is like a tongue-in-cheek joke of like, well, what's the difference between a borderline and a teenager? And the answer is not a lot, like, so there is some degree of narcissism, of borderline, of antisocial, of all of these things that we have to sort of flex in our teenage years in order to give us new ego, confidence, sort of figure out who we are, who we can be. And so some of that is just flexing muscles. It's when you get older and you literally think the rules don't apply to you, or you literally think the that someone else's life is not worth as much as yours. A lot of this is a developmental system, and again, a lot of the rules we have for diagnoses were made long ago before we understood really how the brain works and how long, like the neural collections. And your brain is also, with every new activity you try, your brain makes new neural pathways, so that we talk about muscle memory. It's actually brain memory, and like the muscles are the byproduct.
Yeah.
So I don't want to think that there's I don't want to think that there's anyone who can't change. There are many who are more likely not to change. But given the right incentive and mindset, most people can control their behaviors.
Definitely. I think that answers this question here. It says, some maverick filmmakers and artists feel the rules don't apply to them. Are they sociopaths? Larry David is a sociopath. It's everybody on Larry David today.
I didn't give him 2 seconds of thought before I logged in. Now I'm like, and at first I thought it said Larry King, and I was like, he's dead. But so now I caught up by the end of the sentence. I don't know if they think that the rules don't apply to them, or that part of being in a creative field is finding where you can break the rules and finding where you can be different. Um, I'm a writer, not a filmmaker, but still, when I'm telling a story, I try to tell it like no one else would. I write a blog for Psychology Today, and I talk about mental health issues and parenting and all that stuff. And I don't think people would be interested in reading me if I did sound like everyone else. The same thing goes for blogging or, podcasting, everything. When I meet a new patient, I'm quick to explain that I'm not vanilla. So if you want someone who's going to like blank slate it and tell you, nothing here, I can't do it. I've already told you guys I have children and,
Yeah.
like crazy pants. So I don't know if it's being a sociopath or if it's trying to be creative. That being said, there is an overlap between like intelligence and creativity. The ability to think outside that box is huge.
Yeah. And especially, I think with being creative too, it's not like you're trying to damage everyone around you, or yeah, you're basically just trying to figure out what can I do to make this the best possible project. And if I have to break a few rules, and fuck it, we'll explore it when we get there. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, sociopath and antisocial behavior, they're slightly different, but the idea is a lack of caring or a lack of concern for other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why, like, and I think you're correct with. Well, I don't think, like, I know who am I to say here. You mean you obviously are, but earlier, a lot of times I was, especially growing up, I thought that maybe I might be a sociopath, but I was young, and I think that's a lot of what it was, right? Like, I didn't have that empathy, and I had to learn that empathy because I was young, and it wasn't beneficial to my social circle at the time to have that empathy, right? And then as I grew up, had children, and really experienced life, then I could kind of see, like, wow, like, empathy is definitely beneficial to society, but unfortunately to my social circle at that time, it wasn't.
Sure. And then you grow up. I mean, that's,
Definitely. So, and if anyone else has any questions, go ahead and hit that link. You could jump on there. Normally we take phone calls, but for some reason I can't get the mixer to connect with you so you can hear it. But yeah. So I wanted to ask about this is something we talk about a lot here, and it's emotional trauma, PTSD.
Sure.
A lot of us who are on this channel, we've come from the streets, and we see things at young ages that maybe a lot of typical children don't see, such as violence in the home, and then violence on the streets. We have to deal with death at a lot younger ages. Sometimes we have friends that pass away 14, 15 years old. How long does that stick with you, and what happens to these kids who don't get help from that, and how can people intervene also for these kids?
Sure. I mean, the first, it depends on the severity. It depends on the individual. It depends on what adaptations are allowed in the community. For example, I'm also, don't even ask, but I'm also a yoga teacher. I mean, pandemic, plenty of time to do stuff. So, I'm also a yoga teacher, and one of the most interesting classes I took was like teaching yoga with PTSD victims, and there are things that I never thought about. And it's something like, not sitting. You don't you don't put your back to the door. So even if that's where the entrance to the class is, if you're a yoga teacher and you or sense or feel that someone might have PTSD, you switch the room around. And I think it's such a normal thing among soldiers when they come back. I hear it's also like a mafia thing, which is cool too, but less loyal, less I don't know. There's less of a positive esteem thing, I think, going there, but if it becomes normal around like your cohort of similarly traumatized people, I don't think it's as bad. I also work with a few people who had lost people or spent a good period of time thinking they lost people in 9/11. And so, that day is its own kind of PTSD for them, and anything leading up to it and whatnot. It sounds stupid, but clearly, seek therapy. And more importantly, seek the right therapist, because not every therapist is the right therapist. And, and definitely seek someone who works with post-traumatic stress disorder. Seek someone that has experience. There's very few like niches that I think a therapist has to have to be able to help you. Eating disorders, you should go to someone who specializes in eating disorders. PTSD, you should do that. Something like death and bereavement, I don't depending on how great the loss was, I think you don't necessarily need someone who specializes. But again, the severity of the loss. So, if you lost your entire family in a house fire or some horrible something, you should look for someone who's familiar with that, who's more experienced. And the irony of, well, okay, so how do we fix it? Well, here's the irony. You fix it by talking about it, like a lot, until the words and the feelings lose their joint meaning. I say that's humorous because now everyone feels they have to give trigger alerts on their podcast or on their this or on their that. And as a true crime fan, like, I'm listening to a true crime podcast. I'm not gonna, if I were to be triggered, I don't know that I would listen to a true crime podcast. Or perhaps listening is my way of equipping myself for another trauma. So a lot of our trigger warnings and wanting to avoid harm or inadvertently harming others, it actually works counterintuitively to the way we have treated dealing with PTSD for the last 40, 50 years.
Damn, yeah. Something you brought up made me think about something too. It's a trip because it seems like a lot of times with social media, I don't know if there's a difference between human normal, like face-to-face empathy and online empathy. Right? So because like you said, there's certain things that people will say, and they kind of like, it's more about being right and speaking at each other rather than speaking to each other. And it's more about, it seems like, people trying to get their message across as opposed to relaying the correct message, hearing the correct message. Is there a difference? Am I tripping with that? Or is there a difference between face-to-face interaction and empathy and online empathy?
There must be a difference. But there are also some people for example, you and I have never met in person, and so there are some relationships in this day and age that are only virtual. So some of the place that I find difficult is like the little things, like if someone says their grandma died, and my first thought is to like heart that, not because I'm glad your grandma died, but because like it's so that we sort of trip over our feet sometimes. And also, if you're really suffering, social media is not the place. Should not be the only place for you, because I very much believe things can get misconstrued. You only know so much. It's just a lot there.
Yeah.
So it is confusing. Listen, that being said, I met when my book was coming out, I met some very good people across the world. Some struggling, some some in the midst of the struggle, some survivors who are coming up with another struggle. And it's very funny. Like the other day, I was having a really tough day, and I looked at my I looked down at my Facebook notifications, and I think she's 19. She's 19. She's in the Midwest. And she wrote, "I don't know if you need to hear this today." Like, she texted me, message, whatever. She was like, "I don't know if you need to hear this today, but I just walked into my door." And I absolutely needed to hear that. Like, like I went from like deep in my own shit to like laughing because thank you. I really did need to hear it. And I don't know how she knew, but she knew. And so there's different kinds of support. I'm not a big fan of the what is the talk space? Is that what it is? Where you talk to a therapist, like texting, talking.
Okay, yeah.
And the interesting thing is, like, I do text. My patients can text me. Like, my phone's never, like, the ringer's never on. So at 3:00 in the morning, you think of something we need to talk about, text. It's not going to wake me. If I get up at 4, I might text back. Who knows? But so I'm not saying that therapists shouldn't be more available, because frankly, given where the world is, we should be the most available, but there is something to say about the I want to be able to see your face so that I know how you're doing, especially if there's a history of suicidality or something. And I did look into joining one of those, the online text therapy things. And this should surprise no one, but they make you have to get your own separate insurance, which means they're not covering your ass. You're covering your ass. So if someone who you've never met lives across the country, maybe you've spoke to them twice, commits suicide or does something else horrific, technically it's on the therapist, and it's not a fair, I don't know, it's a burden. We take on these burdens willingly, but I take them on knowing that I'm able to watch your body language, to make a connection, to, I'm huge on Zoom, Skype, whatever, FaceTime, that I haven't stopped. But I don't know, there's something to be said where you're a third party and the burden of someone's well-being falls on you, despite the fact that you've never met them.
Being that you're that you work with a lot with suicidal teens, I was watching this show, and it was I don't know if you ever watched that show, 60 Days In.
No.
It's really it's pretty unethical. It shouldn't be on TV. But
okay, so that it sounds right up my alley. What network is it on?
It's on A&E, and what they do is they get civilians, regular people, get 6 regular people and put them in jail, undercover, and they have to figure out certain things that are going on in jail. And these are people with no criminal background, and a lot of times people don't realize, people a lot of times don't wake up and become criminals, or become convicts, and a lot of times it's a process. You start young, juvenile hall, you kind of are on the streets, and you kind of are involved in a world that prepares you to go there. And a lot of these people are just thrown in there. There was one guy who was a military vet. I think his name was Nate. Nate, he did two rounds on that show. Instead of doing 60 days, did 120. I guess he was a Iraq war vet. Did the 60 days in, came home and guess got into some issues with his wife and ended up committing suicide in public.
Oh.
Yeah, he killed himself at a Domino's, I believe it was, or a Pizza Hut. I forgot which one of those. But he ended up killing himself in public. And I was just wondering, like, why the need to do it in public? And he did put a long message as to make it a point to why he was going to kill himself. But why is there a need for him to do it in public and make it like such a statement?
I don't know why, but I will say my bet is this was not his first attempt at suicide.
He did mention that.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's both really easy and really hard to commit suicide. I know people don't like the word commit, and I'm just gonna have to say I'm sorry, but I don't associate the word commit with a crime, although frankly, it's still a crime in some states. Not one that they're going to uphold, thankfully. But I understand both sides of the story, and I'm just not willing to be politically correct at this point in time in terms of
verbiage in that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not. It comes from a lot of frustration and whatnot, but so I'll ask for your listener or viewers forgiveness in advance. It's something I may be ready for in the future, but I'm not right now. And I hope that's understood, because I guess if with an attitude like that, I could say that I'm not ready to not use racist jargon, and I just don't mean it the same way. I more mean it like, this is how I grew up, and I do think when someone takes their own life, there has to be some sort of an acceptance of a burden.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of people have to try multiple times, and a lot of people have. If you really want to die, you tend to get very creative, and so. I think it's horrible. I don't know how many of this had to do with the 60 Days show, because I've never watched it, but certainly adding more stressors to this environment is a poor idea. But let's see, college. Lots of kids kill themselves at certain colleges. Like, you chose to go to that college, you knew it was tough, and yet there you are. So like, some things are choices that we make for ourselves, and some things are normal upbringing or abnormal upbringing, like sexual abuse or physical abuse or something. So it is tough, and I know that people who do commit suicide do so because they feel like they're fighting a battle against themselves and they're losing.
And I wonder how much of that, like you're saying, the expectations they have are more what could be like described as societal expectations as opposed to their own expectations. Because if they were probably truly doing what they, but then again, there are some people, like, mental health is a motherfucker too, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, so even you could be as happy as on top of the world one day, right? So I don't know. I just wonder how much of it is the pressure put on them that they see society puts on them, as opposed to what they really truly want to do.
Well, who's society? I mean, if you're a kid, society is your parents and your peers. If you're a woman, you're more like, I mean, men too, but women are likely to say, trying to live up to beauty expectations. I don't know anything about a teacher that hung herself in a classroom. I'm definitely curious about that. That was a comment that just came in. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, maybe he says, I still remember that teacher. I wonder if it was his teacher.
Maybe. No. Someone just said that they. Thank you. Killers and suicide folks take years to make. It didn't happen overnight. He did it to show the world how they hurt him. That's one possibility. It's not the most common. Then again, our data source is somewhat limited. We can. Perhaps they did he did this to show the world how much he was hurt. or perhaps he couldn't stand the pain anymore. It's
Yeah, there was more going on in his life too. I think he was going through a divorce with his wife, and they had 2 kids. One kid, one on the way, and I guess he was involved in some kind of allegation against her.
uh,
Yeah, so there was just like there was a lot going on there, and then like you're right. I think adding that 60 days in, not that that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, but I think it was an unnecessary burden. Uh, have because a lot of people that go in there have mental health issues. It's like I don't think that's a healthy thing for them. That's why I think it's an unethical show. It's entertaining though. I'm not gonna lie, very entertaining, and I watch it, but I see a lot of these people, and I'm like, you guys don't belong in that kind of a place. Like, it's not, like I said, with anything, it's kind of like you never just go from point A to point B, hardly ever, right? There's something that happens, and they weren't prepared for that kind of a lifestyle. I don't know. I just think that yeah, it's a
well,
lot.
there's another part of that also, which is that many years ago, the Stanford prison experiment, where they randomly assigned some of these college kids to be guards and some to be prisoners, and it was supposed to go for like 10 or 12 days, and they cut it off at day like 4 because people had literally taken on their roles. They were being violent and aggressive, and the guards were belittling, and the prisoners were starting to, to form I'm going to say to form gangs, but really I'm pretty sure it was all Stanford College volunteers. So I don't know how good their gang skills were, but it was like, but Milgram was the guy's name, and his wife was co-running this with him, and she turned to him. She's like, "You got to shut this off. Like, someone's going to die." And so people do fall into roles very easily.
Yeah. Um, Oscar Montes has a question. He says, I'm 57 and I don't like to be around many people, even familia. What does doctor think is wrong, or am I okay? Maybe that's what happens when you get older. But I think we need a little bit more information, right? Like,
Well, they just say they see voices and hear color. Oh, that just kidding. Thank you. Okay, because those are real things. Some people do see voices and hear colors, and it's amazing. And you had me at that. Some people just more loners than others. And I don't know if the pandemic affected it, or if, but definitely some people need other people. Some people don't. I grew up with not the greatest relationship with my mother, and so for me, like when I first started college, and they have sororities where like groups of women live together, I would rather have lived with vampires. Like, I could think of nothing worse than, like, this for me was like, no, that's a no. Like, I'd rather be with no one than be with a group of 10 people, and I only like 8 of them.
yeah,
That's just not my comfort zone. So if you feel like you're isolating from everyone, no, some people require more social skills. I have 2 kids. My son can and will entertain himself by building things or drawing things forever. And at some point, my daughter's like, "Can we go to a store or somewhere? We need to leave the house. We need to see people." As long as it's not interfering with your daily activities, as long as you're still functioning, doing what you need to do, whether that be a job or a hobby, or interacting with the few people you do like. No, don't buy into other people's expectations.
true. Robert asked this. We'll get to this question, then I have another question because I know we're limited on time. So I have another question I wanted to ask, and then we'll wrap it up. Let me see here. He says, what about ritual suicide, as in Japanese and pre-Columbian? But I think that's totally different, right?
It's totally different. It's taught as a so I'm Jewish, so we just had my son's bar mitzvah 2 weeks ago, and I mean, it doesn't end in suicide, but it's ritual. And it's something that people do to in the Jewish religion. That's when a boy becomes a man. It's not when a girl becomes a woman, because girls are irrelevant like they are in most, but regardless, we do it for them too now. But ritual suicide, it tends to be, there's usually religious overtones. It's not, I don't think it's just about Japanese and whatever. And so it's different. Yeah, I think it's very different. It's more cultural.
Definitely. We'll get one more, and then I'll ask my question.
Sure.
Says, I unknowingly lock doors everywhere I go. I even close bathroom windows when I go to the bathroom. Is that normal?
I don't know if so you lock door. Oh, you unknowingly lock doors. You close bathroom windows when you take it. I mean, my guess is that it's normal for you. You know, if you like, the house that I lived in 3 years ago, we moved, and the house that we lived in, the front door automatically locked when you close it. So, and in this one it doesn't, and so it's like, you would think I'm dealing with 3-year-olds, because like, can you unlock the door for me? Like, or I'm like, lock the door. Like, no one understands you have to lock this door, because we just got used to it. So it may just be a comfort level, something you're used to. I don't think there's anything wrong with. I mean, but I think there's a lot wrong with me. But and if that were my thing and it wasn't interfering with my life, I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
you're good. If it bothers you, if it bothers someone else, if it prohibits your sense of well-being, then then it's something. But otherwise, I'm pretty sure you've got other stuff wrong with you. We all do. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's one thing I think a lot of people, at least people that I've dealt with, that I try to get them to understand about me is, I might be a little strange, I might be a little off at certain things, but I'm comfortable with who I am,
Sure.
and so that's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay with me, right? Maybe or some people don't like what I do, and I could tell them, okay, let me know what it is you don't like what I'm doing, and I try my best to not do that around you. If and if they're really, and I hate to sound like a dick, but if they're really not that significant to me, then I'll be like, well, then just don't be around me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been holding back from swearing like a lot, this as much as I can, as much as you've probably ever seen me. Because ultimately, like, I don't I don't think words have the power that other people do, and which is funny because I'm a writer, but also, like, I am a sweary pants mom, and my kids, first of all, they're very good at making D's nuts joke, which I did not teach them. That comes up a lot, and then also they're very good at not swearing when daddy's home.
Mhm.
Like, they don't swear in school. Like, we know when the correct time is and is not to swear. So if you don't like my mouth, don't be my friend. Like,
And so this is the last question I wanted to ask. One of my biggest fears, and this is true, I am really afraid of automation and artificial intelligence. And
okay.
I know it's a lot of it's probably because of watching Terminator and shit like that. But one of my biggest fears when it comes to artificial intelligence, is that people will rely on it so much that they will neglect human interaction. Um, and they can, because especially with, like, I think what's his name? Not Jeff Bezos. What's the other guy's name?
I know you're talking
Zuckerberg.
about
Yeah,
Musk. Yeah,
yeah,
Musk, Elon Musk.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah. Oh, thank you
Zuckerberg with
too.
the meta world, or whatever you call it, right? Are we, like, is it a dangerous road to travel through, where you kind of have a blend of human interaction and artificial intelligence? And can we get to a point where it becomes confusing and we don't know what is true human interaction, or am I just overthinking it?
I think the answer is both. I cannot prove I'm not a robot when asked to. Like,
Yeah.
I can't fill out one of those captcha things to save my life, and I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm extremely bright, often distracted, and don't know how to do a captcha thing. I'm like, they're like, where are the stoplights? I'm like, I don't know. That might be a stoplight in the background. Maybe I can't see it. Um, I also hate talking to robots, like to Autobots, when when you're trying to get help, because they're not able to help me. I use too many words. They don't understand it. Like, I think we've gotten a lot farther, but I'm not yet worried that we're going to be replaced. and that's just your thing to worry about. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, my office used to be right by the local fire station, and if a fire went off, I had to look at my phone because clearly someone will call me if my house is on fire. You know, it didn't take up too much of my day. My patients would laugh, and then we'd go back to session. So some of the things that make us are just parts of our uniqueness, and you know, until it makes you. I also don't like making left turns. Like
Yeah,
if
I'm the same way.
I would rather make 3 rights or whatever it
I'm
is.
the same way.
Yeah,
People say I'm neurotic. One of my
yeah.
best friends, he's on here too. He's always like, "Why? Just make a left turn." It's like I don't feel comfortable with that left.
I
There's no.
don't either. I'd rather go all the way around and come back to it.
And before we wrap it up, could you go ahead and tell us about the podcast again,
Yes,
and where if they want to get a hold of you, where they can reach you at?
absolutely. I am on Instagram at Psych Shrink Mom. I am also on TikTok at Psych Shrink Mom. I don't do dances. I don't do any of those things. I don't even know why I'm on. I'm on because some guest on Neurotic Nourishment told me that I should. And then I have the 2 podcasts are Neurotic Nourishment and then Crimes of Long Island podcast. And both of them, you can find them everywhere, anywhere. I feel like we're all putting them in the same spot. So, you know, to say all 9 of them sounds silly, but I would love a listen or a rate or a review. And I was reading some really cool podcasts, like reviews the other day, and someone just started talking about squirrels. It was a true crime podcast, and they gave 5 stars, and they just talked about squirrels. So, like, I don't know. I'll take a squirrel review. I'll take anything. So, but if you can find me at all those places, and also on Psychology Today, I have a blog called The Venn Diagram Life, and I'm always happy for feedback. I'm happy for suggestions, for topics, anything. And I enjoy this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate your time. Thank you for everything today. And again, if you guys haven't, go ahead and follow her. That's the Instagram, and is it gonna be the same for TikTok, exactly like that?
I think so. Yeah,
Thank
probably.
you,
I mean, my 6-year-old set it up, so you know.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate your time, and everybody else, appreciate you guys jumping on. Much love to the Nasty Crew. Much love to all my Y babies. And with that, we out. Peace.
Thank you.